Welcome to HB Reddit Stories. Today we will see stories of r/am I the a-hole. Am I the a-hole for leaving my party for beating cancer? I, 35M, am a very private person. I have no social media, don't want my wife, 32F, posting photos of me, although I don't tell her not to, just don't ask her to post me. Celebrating Father's Day or my birthday, I don't like attention on me and prefer to keep things low-key whenever I can. So, keeping that in mind, I was diagnosed with an extremely curable type of skin cancer. It was caught very early on and I never felt scared for my life in any way, shape or form. I'm an engineer and I think analytically and wasn't scared with a diagnosis with a 0.03% fatality rate. Still, I told my wife of course, and she was terrified. We talked through it and told her my doctor was very optimistic and said we have caught it early on, etc. None of it seemed to help, but I tried. After a while, I told her that we shouldn't tell our kids, 5F and 7F. My wife wanted to tell them, but I was adamant about that. I'm not even sure they would understand what we're talking about. Reluctantly, she agreed not to. About a week later, I get a call from my dad, asking about my cancer. Turns out, my wife posted on FB about my cancer that morning. I called her and wasn't happy that she posted my business and is behind that "you didn't say I couldn't post it, just not to tell the kids" excuse. There is no way she would think I wanted that posted online, no matter what I said. So, she took it down and time went by. Very quickly, I was in remission with my skin cancer and my doctor told me, word for word, "We don't like to say you're cured, but you're cured." I told my wife and she was ecstatic. She told me she was worried all this time, I could tell, and glad we put this all behind us. I thought we could put this all behind us too. This weekend, I'm coming home on Friday. I see a lot of cars parked on the street, some in my driveway. I couldn't think of any birthdays or anniversaries I missed, but went in anyway. It was a party for my remission diagnosis. I was mortified at this. She's never done anything like this and we've talked about how I would hate a surprise party multiple times. I asked what this is for. Said, "I'm sorry, but I didn't know you planned this, I'm just coming back for some files and heading back to work." It was a lie. I gathered up some meaningless files in my office and said thanks to everyone for coming and left to go back to my office, messing around on my phone until everyone left. My wife knew I was lying and we fought that night and I told her I don't know what's gotten into her. But she knows I would never want this and she doesn't get to make a big deal out of something personal I never wanted to be public in the first place. We've been cold this whole week and my brother said I'm the a-hole since I told him I just pretended to go to work. So, am I the a-hole for not wanting to celebrate beating my cancer? Top comments. Not the a-hole. Your wife completely disregarded your feelings re personal privacy. She should take down the FB post immediately and apologize for ambushing you with the party. OP replies. In her defense, she did take down the FB post when I called her, without my asking her to take it down. Not the a-hole. Does your wife even know you? I find her behavior to be really odd and inappropriate. You should not have to command or request her not to post about you. It should come naturally to her to A, already know what you'd be okay and not okay with and B, know to ask if she wants to communicate something about you. It's not giving me great vibes about your wife, to be honest. I cannot tell if she's overdramatic to the point of being a liability and totally irrational, or if she's a bit of an attention hound. Either way, her behavior is not okay and having a serious talk with her about this is very reasonable. I would guess others find her behavior strange too. There must have been something a bit off for your parents in finding out about your cancer through social media. You need to be able to trust your spouse. In some ways, they should be like an extension of yourself, in that you should be able to trust that they won't do something they know you would not want. Missteps happen, of course, but this is her deciding she wants to handle your medical situation a different way than you want to handle it, which is obviously inappropriate of her. Not the a-hole. She is acting selfishly and making your cancer about herself and ignoring your wishes. She should ask you before doing things of this nature. She is invading your privacy. Not the a-hole. Has she always had main character syndrome? 'Cause it seems like she is trying to get attention by using your cancer diagnosis/remission. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling everyone that I was serving a chicken pot pie for dinner when it wasn't a plain and basic one? So I had a few people over, and one of the easiest meals for me to make is a pot pie. To me, a pot pie is just whatever you want inside of a crust. Chicken pot pie is usually leftover veggies with a thick gravy and crust. This time around I had fresh roasted hatch chilies and some corn and chicken, onions, and kale. So that's what I put inside, and I used my savory pie crust that has some cheddar and black pepper. When I served it, however, I guess it really pissed off my brother-in-law Frank, who immediately started complaining, asking, "What the F is this, and how is this a pot pie?" I told him it's a pot pie and explained what I said above. He tried to argue that a chicken pot pie shouldn't have anything other than chicken, gravy, peas, carrots, and maybe potatoes. I said, okay, well, sorry, I don't really see food in black and white. No one said they had any allergies or issues with food, so I didn't think it would be an issue. He kept on scowling and pushed around the food and eventually left early. Am I the a-hole? In my family we really never kept recipes as hyper-specific. We cook and eat what we have. I guess I figured most families were the same and that it's just people on the internet who make a big deal out of recipes. Top comments. Not the a-hole. While I can see why Frank may have expected a certain kind of pot pie and was perhaps disappointed to not get it, it doesn't excuse his rude, ungrateful behavior towards someone who cooked for him. Everyone knows that the proper, non-a-hole thing to do in this situation is to move the food around your plate, make an excuse about having a late lunch, and then stop at a drive-thru on the way home. For what it's worth, I make non-traditional stuff, too, but I do try to warn any unsuspecting guests about it. Like in this instance, I would have said it was a hatch chili or southwestern pot pie. The issue here is nothing to do with the definition of chicken pot pie. The issue is that you invited someone to your home, prepared and served him a meal, and he said, "What the F is this?" This is unacceptably rude guest behavior, making him the big-time a-hole and you not the a-hole. Everyone sucks here. Frank is definitely an a-hole for the way he reacted. No doubt about that, and I don't think anyone here is confused about that. But you pulled a bait and switch. You can say all you want that pot pie is a whatever you want in a crust, but that's like saying shepherd's pie is any pie a shepherd makes. Words are defined by their usage, they don't mean things just because we want them to. Chicken pot pie is the name of a specific dish. When you tell people that you're making chicken pot pie, they are expecting something that is recognizable as that dish. What you've described does not qualify. The fact that it shares 1 to 2 ingredients doesn't change that any more than it changes a mutton and potatoes pie into a shepherd's pie. Next story. Am I the a-hole for not giving my brother a share of my inheritance for his property taxes? When my mom passed, she left everything to my older brother, Jason. Jason never moved out of my mom's home. He never had anything more than part-time minimum wage jobs. My mom forgot about me or my sister and preferred Jason. It also meant she had minimal contact with her grandchildren when she favored him. My father, who lost that home in a divorce, said it wasn't fair that Jason inherited everything from my mom. My father suddenly passed away, and Jason was kept out of his will because my dad was still sour about what my mom did. Jason was shocked when he was left out of my dad's will. He said the property tax on my mom's house was late because he was planning to use the money from dad's inheritance, which was a dirty trick dad pulled on him. My sister Debbie already told Jason to get a job, and maybe he will have the $7,000 by the time it's due. I'm also not giving Jason crap. It's how my dad wanted it. Jason was freaking out during the reading because he didn't get anything, and he's already going through most of my mom's money and hasn't worked in 5 years since her death. He called us all a-holes and said he needed the money more than us. I'm sure this was the same line he used on my mom to get Debbie and me written out of my mom's will. Jason acts like he will fight the will, but my dad talked about how Jason got 100% of my mom's inheritance. He doesn't get anything. On top of my dad's insurance, Debbie and I are going to sell my dad's home, and hopefully, the market stays hot. I suggest to my brother that he do the same thing and take the money and downsize to a smaller apartment or home. My brother is ranting to anyone who will listen, calling us selfish a-holes, and even setting up a GoFundMe for his taxes. Several family members have donated. My grandma, on my mom's side, has reached out to me to help him with the taxes, and I said no. My grandma said she is no longer going to leave Debbie and me anything now because of how we treated our brother, but I reminded my grandma that our mom, her daughter, started this, and no one threw a fit about it when mom died. Debbie had 2 small children then and could have used the money. I didn't see Debbie start a GoFundMe, and I don't remember you, Grandma, calling Jason and asking him to give up part of his share for us. My grandma said it was a different situation, and I told her, not really. Top comments. Not the a-hole. Jason got a leg up 5 years ago, but instead of using it, he sat on his butt the whole time. He's an adult and has nothing to show for where that money went. It didn't even go to paying the taxes on the home he was gifted. His bad decisions don't warrant an emergency on yours or Debbie's part. He still has options. He can sell his house, he can get a job, he can do what people everywhere do all the time. He's not hopeless, he's lazy. Not the a-hole. I don't think this needs great elaboration. You were treated unfairly and he seems to be a lazy jerk who deserves what's coming to him. You are totally reasonable in saying no. Next story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to cook for my boyfriend anymore because he always fixes my meals? I, 32F, have been with my boyfriend, 34M, for about a year now. We've moved in together recently, and while everything has been great, there's one thing that's really starting to bother me. Every time I cook, he insists on fixing my meals. To clarify, I'm a pretty good cook. I'm no professional chef, but I know my way around the kitchen, and my friends and family have always enjoyed my cooking. However, my boyfriend has this habit of hovering around while I'm cooking, tasting everything, and then adding extra spices, salt, or other ingredients without asking. Sometimes he even goes as far as changing the whole dish by adding things like hot sauce or extra cheese, completely altering the flavor. At first, I just let it go, but after months of this, it's driving me nuts. I put effort into making meals, and he always feels the need to tweak them. It makes me feel like my cooking isn't good enough for him. Last night, I made dinner and told him straight up that I don't want him to fix it this time. He did it anyway, dumping extra seasoning into the pot while my back was turned. I got so frustrated that I told him if he doesn't like the way I cook, he can make his own meals from now on. He thinks I'm overreacting and that it's not a big deal. He even accused me of being controlling about food. I, on the other hand, feel disrespected because I've asked him multiple times to stop. So, am I the a-hole for refusing to cook for him anymore after he keeps altering my meals? Top comments. Not the a-hole. If anyone is being controlling about food here, it's him. Every time you cook has to be his way, and even when you explicitly tell him to knock it off, he won't. I know a bit about people being controlling about food. I have been stabbed with a fork for daring to eat off someone else's plate. I have also chased people out of the kitchen with a spoon for wanting to help. I've got experience with this is what I'm saying. Your boy. He's an a-hole. If it makes you feel better, he probably doesn't know he's an a-hole. He probably thinks he's helping. That's because he has no respect for your cooking. Again, it's likely not personal, he has just built up a set of assumptions in his mind. Things like, she doesn't know that my version is better, and she didn't mind the first 47 times I helped, she won't really mind now. Thing is, at this point you aren't going to get through to him with polite words. If you want him to stop, you are going to have to set a boundary, it's going to need to be loudly and clearly placed, and you are going to need to enforce that boundary no matter how much he complains of its existence. You can do this in a couple ways. The reasonable way would be to sit him down and talk, as bluntly as possible. I hate when you interfere with my cooking. Hate. If you want me to cook for you ever again, then you need to stay away from my cooking until it's time to eat. The next time you try to help, I stop cooking for you. If you understand, repeat that last line for me. Alternatively, and I am obviously aggressive enough to favor this route, the next time you cook, get twice the ingredients you normally would. Cook as normal. Wait for him to help, then take the meal he has just touched and chuck it in the garbage. Make eye contact the entire time. Then begin prepping again. Repeat as necessary until he gets the message. Oh! Before I forget, not the a-hole. Next story. Am I the a-hole for screaming at my father and his wife and refusing to stop until I said what I needed to? I, 16F, live with my father, his wife, my 2 step-siblings and half-sibling. My parents divorced when I was 3 and I last saw my mom when I was 6. She lost custody of me because she's mentally ill and her whole family is. My father was awarded primary custody of me, which became sole custody over time. I really only remember one visit with my mom and she was really sick. We know her parents, her 4 siblings and her all suffered with their mental health and likely the same one. It's also believed her great-grandparents were mentally ill too, but she never knew them. I never knew anyone in her family. My father and his wife met when I was 5 and we lived together when I was 6 and they got married when I was 7. She wanted to adopt me but I said no. My mother pays child support and has never missed a payment according to my grandpa. My father and his wife like to ignore my mental health and the family history and genetic component to mental illness. They like to pretend my father's wife is my mother and they don't want me talking about my mom. I still do. It pissed them off. I bring up the mental health reasons and they tell me nurture is more important than nature. They tell me I'm disrespectful dismissing my father's wife's influence and place in my life and how I have 2 parents in my home. I shouldn't wonder about someone who didn't love me enough to get herself together. I told them mental illness isn't that straightforward and they told me to focus on my real mom, meaning my father's wife. I don't call her my stepmother because of how dismissive she is about my mental health. Same reason my father is my father and not my dad. My grandma never liked my mom so she's with them. But grandpa is on my side. He also kept in touch with mom secretly and checks in on her. I know I'm mentally ill. I already have some stuff going on. I told my father and he brushed it off as me imagining things, which I said yeah, and that's my problem. But he doesn't want to hear it. His wife doesn't want me to talk about it when her kids are in the house. So basically never. They saw me searching my mom's name online last week and they told me to drop it and stop disrespecting my real mom, the woman who raised me and is the reason I am who I am. They said I keep looking for ways to push her away. And I lost it. I started screaming that she's not my mom, she will never be my mom, she didn't pass her DNA on to me and it's not her medical history that's relevant to mine. I told them she can't save me from mental illness. That they can't ignore the problem and think it won't happen. They tried to stop me but I kept going until I made it very clear how angry I was and how I would blame them if I got so bad it was harder to treat. They were madder than I ever saw them. Especially because the other kids were in the house and heard everything. Am I the a-hole? Top comments. Not the a-hole, your father and his wife are erasing your mother from your life and that is wrong. Thankfully you can move out when you're 18. OP replies. Yep. I'll be able to leave and it will probably be the healthiest thing I can do at that age. I'm sorry you are going through this. Can you talk to your doctor and ask them to speak to your father and out the relevance of your family health history? You are absolutely right that mental health issues can be very complicated, and it's wrong to bomb your mother for being sick. I wonder if they would have said Ted like this if she had physical disabilities which meant it was hard for her to care for you. It's very sad that they were not able to be more pen to HR being part of your life. Love is not a finite resource and lots of people have 3 or more loving, involved parents. It is, of course, possible that there were also other issues. You again, it's natural for you to be curious about that SIE of your family and that half of your genetics. If you can, maybe tell them that your interest in your mother and her health doesn't change the way you feel about them, or the importance of what ye have provided for you. But they need to understand that she is a part of who you are and you both want to, and have a right to, be able to learn about her and form your own opinions about her, and that you would prefer to do that openly and with their support. OP replies. It did come up years ago. I don't really remember the context. My grandpa tried telling him that too. But they're so desperate for his wife to be my mom that they're willing to overlook everything to do with my mom. It's why I'm not close to either of them and really don't have the warmest relationship or really care much for them. I don't remember ever having the best relationship with them. The only solid one I've had is my grandpa. I hope you guys like this video. If you did, make sure like, comment, share and subscribe the channel HB Reddit Stories.